Picture this. It's 1994, and a struggling video store clerk turned filmmaker hands in a script so violent, so profane, and so structurally bizarre that the studio head literally calls it the worst thing ever written and immediately puts it into turnaround. Fast forward a few months, and that same script wins the Palme d'Or at Cannes, resurrects John Travolta's dead career, and changes Hollywood forever. That filmmaker was Quentin Tarantino, and that script was Pulp Fiction. But here's what's wild. Almost every iconic moment you remember from this movie, the dance, the cast, even that famous biblical speech, nearly didn't happen. Today, we're counting down 20 mind-blowing facts about Pulp Fiction that reveal just how close this masterpiece came to being something completely different. Let's dive in. Starting at number 20. Pulp Fiction's famous biblical quote isn't actually from the Bible. When Jules delivers that intense Ezekiel speech before executing someone, audiences assumed Tarantino pulled it straight from Scripture. Wrong. The director actually lifted most of it from a 1976 Japanese martial arts film called The Bodyguard, starring Sonny Chiba. In that movie, the character literally says, "And they shall know that I am Chiba the bodyguard, when I shall lay my vengeance upon them." Tarantino changed the ending to reference the Lord, added some original lines about righteous men and evil, and created one of cinema's most quotable moments. The best part? He originally wrote this speech for a completely different movie, From Dusk Till Dawn, where Harvey Keitel's preacher character would recite it to vampires. Stick around because the casting stories get even crazier. Number 19. The word that defines the movie appears exactly 265 times. That's right, the film drops the F-bomb 265 times across its runtime. And surprisingly, that's not even Tarantino's record. Reservoir Dogs used it 269 times. But Pulp Fiction was the undisputed profanity champion of 1994, with no other film that year coming even remotely close. This massive use of explicit language nearly killed the movie's chances before it even got made. But we'll get to that controversy in just a bit. At 18, the famous briefcase glow was created with something incredibly simple: a light bulb and a battery. That mysterious golden shine that hits Vincent's face when he opens Marcellus Wallace's briefcase? Total movie magic. The crew literally just put a light bulb inside the case powered by a battery. For decades, fans have theorized about what's actually in there. Diamonds from Reservoir Dogs, Marcellus Wallace's soul, Elvis's gold suit from True Romance. But Tarantino settled it once and for all, saying the contents are whatever the viewer wants it to be. Sometimes the best mystery is no answer at all. 17. Uma Thurman's iconic Mia Wallace almost wore a completely different shirt. In the script, Fabienne was supposed to wear a Frankie Says Relax t-shirt from the band Frankie Goes to Hollywood. But when the production reached out for permission, lead singer Holly Johnson wrote back a rejection letter, stating the connotation was too negative regarding the overdose, panic, and foul language. The band essentially said no thanks to being associated with a film about heroin and violence. Their loss became cinema history. Number 16. Vincent and Mia didn't actually win that dance contest. Here's something you probably missed. After they leave Jack Rabbit Slims with that giant trophy, you assume they won, right? Wrong. Later in the film, during Butch's segment, there's a TV playing in the background. If you listen closely, you'll hear a news report about a dancing trophy being stolen from Jack Rabbit Slims. Mia and Vincent are thieves. Tarantino buried this detail so subtly that most viewers never catch it, but it adds a perfect criminal touch to their evening together. At 15, the movie's non-linear structure creates an intentional memory discrepancy. When we see the diner robbery at the beginning, Honey Bunny screams one version of her threat. At the end, when we see the same scene from Jules' perspective, she says something slightly different.
Any of you fucking pricks move, and I'll execute every motherfucking last one of you. Any of you fucking pricks move, and I'll execute every one of you motherfuckers.
This wasn't a mistake or continuity error. Tarantino did it deliberately. The opening is from Pumpkin and Honey Bunny's point of view, while the ending is from Jules' memory. Different perspectives, different recollections. There was even a deleted scene where Jules imagines shooting both of them dead through the table, but Tarantino cut it because it disrupted the rhythm. And speaking of Jules, wait until you hear how Samuel L. Jackson almost lost this role. 14. Samuel L. Jackson nearly didn't play Jules Winfield, even though Tarantino wrote the part specifically for him. After Jackson had auditioned for Reservoir Dogs a couple years earlier, Tarantino crafted Jules with him in mind. But then, another actor, Paul Calderone, came in and absolutely blew everyone away with his audition. The director and producers were ready to give Calderone the role. Jackson, furious and desperate, flew back to Los Angeles to audition again. He walked in angry, sipping a burger and shake he'd grabbed on the way, and basically transformed into Jules, right there in the audition room. Producer Richard Gladstein said Jackson's eyes were popping out of his head. He looked ready to shoot someone. Jackson stole the part back, and the rest is history. But here's the insult that fueled his fire. When someone came to get him for the audition, they said, "I love your work, Mr. Fishburne." They confused him with Lawrence Fishburne. Jackson channeled that rage straight into the audition. At lucky number 13, Jules's iconic hairstyle was a complete accident. The character was originally written to have a giant afro. But when a crew member was sent to purchase wigs, they didn't know the difference between an afro and a jerry curl, so they bought a jerry curl wig instead. Jackson tried it on, Tarantino surprisingly loved it, and they kept it. According to Jackson, it actually made perfect sense because in that era, all the gangbangers had jerry curls. Sometimes the best creative choices happen by mistake. Number 12, the film only cost about $8.5 million to make. $5 million went straight to the actors' salaries. Here's the incredible part. The movie made all that back in its very first week at the US box office, pulling in over $9 million opening weekend. It went on to gross over $200 million worldwide, a record for an independent film at the time. For context, the largest single expense of the entire production was building the Jack Rabbit Slim's restaurant set, which cost $150,000. And speaking of that restaurant, the scene filmed there almost looked completely different. 11. Uma Thurman hated the song choice for the dance scene. When Tarantino told her they'd be dancing to Chuck Berry's You Never Can Tell, Thurman complained that it didn't sound right. Tarantino's response? Just 2 words: "Trust me, it's perfect." And he was absolutely right. That dance scene became one of the most iconic moments in cinema history. But here's what makes it even better. Thurman was terrified about dancing with John Travolta because of his legendary dance background from Saturday Night Fever and Grease. When she mentioned her nervousness, Travolta told her to shut up and twist. The dance itself was actually enhanced by Travolta's suggestions. He told Tarantino to add novelty dances from the era like the Batman, the Hitchhiker, and the Swim alongside the twist. Travolta would teach Uma the moves, and Tarantino would call them out during filming. Movie magic mixed with real dance talent. At number 10, Christopher Walken possibly forgot his lines during that gold watch speech, but it made the scene better. During Captain Coons' monologue about the watch, Walken appears to pause awkwardly near the end. According to reports, he'd actually forgotten his next lines but recovered in time to make it seem intentional. The filmmakers loved how authentic and emotional that pause felt, so they kept it in the final cut. Sometimes the best acting comes from genuine human moments. And while we're talking about that scene, there's a fascinating theory that Captain Coons might be related to a character mentioned in Django Unchained. Crazy Craig Coons appears on a wanted poster in that film. Tarantino loves connecting his movie universe. 9. Every actor received the same payment, $20,000 per week. In an industry where A-listers command millions more than supporting actors, this was practically unheard of. Bruce Willis, Uma Thurman, John Travolta, Samuel L. Jackson, everyone earned the identical rate. They did, however, share a percentage of the film's box office earnings, which ended up being far more lucrative. This egalitarian approach created a genuine ensemble feel on set, where nobody was treated as more important than anyone else. Though Travolta earned $140,000 total for his 7 weeks of work, which was still a bargain considering how it transformed his career. Number 8. Vincent Vega appears in every single segment of the film. While other characters float in and out of different storylines, Vincent is the only one present in all 4 sections. Vincent Vega and Marcellus Wallace's wife, the gold watch, the Bonnie situation, and the diner. And here's the darkly comedic through line. Something bad happens every single time Vincent goes to the bathroom. He always brings a Pulp Fiction novel to read, and while he's occupied, chaos erupts. Mia overdoses, Pumpkin and Honey Bunny rob the restaurant, and Butch shoots him dead. The bathroom is literally Vincent's undoing throughout the entire movie. At 7. The movie that revitalized Travolta's career was written for someone else entirely. Tarantino originally crafted the role of Vincent Vega for Michael Madsen, intending to connect it to Madsen's character from Reservoir Dogs. Vic Vega, also known as Mr. Blonde, is actually Vincent's brother. Madsen desperately wanted to do it, but had already committed to Wyatt Earp, and the producers refused to let him out of rehearsals. Losing Madsen broke Tarantino's heart, and they didn't speak for years, until Kill Bill brought them back together. Meanwhile, Travolta was considered radioactive in Hollywood. His agent told Vanity Fair that Travolta was as cold as they get. He was less than zero. Producers pushed for bankable stars like Daniel Day-Lewis or Bruce Willis for Vincent. Day-Lewis actually wanted the role, but Tarantino refused everyone except Travolta. That loyalty paid off spectacularly. Travolta earned an Oscar nomination and suddenly had the 90s resurgence with Get Shorty, Face Off, and more. One role changed everything. 6. Bruce Willis worked on the film for only 18 days, but that was never the original plan. The role of Butch was initially written as a young up-and-coming boxer, with Matt Dillon specifically in mind. Dillon loved the script, but wanted time to think about it. Tarantino said no, he needed an answer immediately. When Dillon hesitated, Tarantino rewrote Butch as an older boxer whose best days were behind him and offered it to Bruce Willis instead. Ironically, Willis had been disappointed about not being cast as Vincent, so getting Butch softened that blow. Mickey Rourke also passed on the role to pursue his real-life boxing career, later admitting he didn't understand the script and deeply regretted the decision. Willis's 18-day commitment helped legitimize the film internationally. His box office draw, especially overseas, gave the production credibility. As Tarantino said, when it became his new movie with Bruce Willis, people went absolutely wild. Number 5. Mia Wallace's overdose scene used Campbell's mushroom soup as movie magic. When Vincent finds Mia unconscious with saliva caked around her mouth, that grotesque foam was actually cold mushroom soup. And that shocking moment when he plunges the adrenaline needle into her chest, pure camera trickery. Travolta actually pulled the needle out of Thurman's chest, and they ran the film backward in post-production. If you watch carefully, you'll notice a small mark on Mia's chest that disappears when she's revived, a telltale sign of the reversed footage. Despite how intense it looks, Thurman did all her own acting for that crazed reaction without any special effects in her eyes. She worked herself up naturally, as she said, "You're paid for something." At 4, Uma Thurman almost didn't play Mia Wallace, and the list of alternatives is stunning. Tarantino considered Michelle Pfeiffer, Meg Ryan, Holly Hunter, Daryl Hannah, Isabella Rossellini, Joan Cusack, Alfre Woodard, Halle Berry, and Rosanna Arquette. Julia Louis-Dreyfus from Seinfeld turned it down due to her TV commitment. And here's the shocking one. Tarantino himself said the role came down to 2 final choices, Uma Thurman and Jennifer Aniston. Imagine Rachel from Friends as Mia Wallace. But Thurman initially said no after her agent advised against it. She was only 23, found the script frightening, and Tarantino wasn't yet the revered filmmaker he'd become. So what changed her mind? Tarantino called her up and read the entire restaurant scene between Mia and Vincent over the phone. That personal touch convinced her to take the risk. She later told Vanity Fair, "No one could believe I even hesitated in any way. Neither can I in hindsight." 3. The first draft of Pulp Fiction was 500 pages long, which translates to roughly 8.5 hours of screen time. Tarantino wrote most of the script during a 3-month stay in Amsterdam, fueled by $50,000 he'd earned from Reservoir Dogs. He wrote in his hotel room and in a hash bar called Betty Boop, which explains all those Dutch references. Vincent discussing Amsterdam, Mia mentioning she chills there, Vincent smoking Dutch tobacco, Butch calling Fabienne Tulip. Tarantino's script editor, Linda Chen, once said he was a functional illiterate, a terrible speller, and that the first draft was the diary of a madman. In gratitude for her work typing up his handwritten pages, Tarantino asked Chen if he could watch her pet rabbit while she went on location. He refused, and when the rabbit later died, he named Amanda Plummer's character Honey Bunny after Chen's pet. Dark humor at its finest. Number 2, the studio absolutely hated the script before it became a masterpiece. TriStar Pictures initially optioned Pulp Fiction, and studio head Mike Medavoy gave Tarantino feedback that included calling it too demented, questioning what's going on. Someone's dead, and then they're alive, and declaring it the worst thing ever written. TriStar put the script into turnaround, and every other major studio passed on it. Every single one. Only Miramax, freshly acquired by Disney for $80 million, took a chance on it. Executive producer Danny DeVito sent the script to Harvey Weinstein, and Pulp Fiction became one of Miramax's first major acquisitions under Disney ownership. That rejected, despised script went on to win the Palme d'Or at Cannes, earn 7 Oscar nominations including Best Picture, win Best Original Screenplay, and get preserved in the Library of Congress National Film Registry. It currently sits at number 8 in IMDb's top 250 films of all time. The movie that was too demented and incomprehensible became one of the most influential films in cinema history. And finally, at number 1, here's the most fascinating fact about Pulp Fiction. Tarantino's stolen car became the movie's most legendary piece of memorabilia. That gorgeous 1964 Chevelle Malibu convertible that Vincent drives, that was Tarantino's personal car. During production, it was stolen. For nearly 2 decades, it remained missing, presumably chopped up or lost forever. Then in 2013, almost 20 years later, 2 police officers in Oakland spotted some kids stripping an older car. They arrested them and ran the vehicle identification number, only to discover it had been altered. After investigation, they realized they'd found Tarantino's stolen Pulp Fiction car. The owner who'd recently purchased it had no idea it was stolen, let alone famous. The car was recovered and returned. Just imagine, one of the most iconic vehicles in cinema history, driven by John Travolta in a career-defining role, survived 2 decades on the streets and found its way home. You really can't mess with a man's automobile. From biblical speeches stolen from samurai films to briefcases filled with light bulbs, from actors almost losing their defining roles to studios calling masterpieces the worst thing ever written, Pulp Fiction is proof that the greatest art often emerges from chaos, accidents, and people crazy enough to believe in their vision. Tarantino fought for his cast, fought for his structure, and fought for his voice, and changed cinema forever. If you loved learning these behind-the-scenes secrets, you're going to want to subscribe to this channel. We break down the fascinating true stories behind your favorite films, compare what really happened versus what made it to screen, and uncover incredible facts that most people never know about the movies they love. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Thanks for watching, and remember, they call it a Royale with cheese.